Again, we invite you to turn this morning to the 57th chapter of Isaiah. Again, reading at the 13th verse. And the Lord begins here, just so we're clear, by speaking to some that have chosen to follow some other way. They've fallen in love, so to speak, with someone other than the God that had called them and set them apart. And so he begins by speaking unto them and saying, when thou criest, let thy companies deliver thee, but the wind shall carry them away. Vanity shall take them. But he that putteth his trust in me shall possess the land and shall inherit my holy mountain. See, this is the promise and the assurance of the word of the living God. Now, if you don't believe that he's God, if you don't believe that he is the living God, if you don't believe that he is the one true God, then this doesn't mean much to you. And if you believe that I'm foolish for believing that, I'll tell you now, that's okay. That's all right. You can think I'm foolish all that you want to, as long as you understand that by God's grace and mercy and by the faith that he has granted me, I believe every word of it to be true. I believe God's judgments are true and faithful. I believe God's word is true and faithful. I believe God's promises are true and faithful and real. I believe it because I have a record of it here. I believe it because I have a testimony of it here. I believe it because I have witnessed it in the lives of those around me and in the lives of those that I've been blessed to worship with and among throughout the years, and in the world at large. Whenever God grants us the grace to see, we can see his hand still in all of his creation. He that putteth his trust in me shall possess the land. Well, the first thing that I'm going to tell you is, it's not simply a matter of just waking up one morning and saying, I'm going to trust God today. He calls us by his grace and mercy and builds that trust with us day by day by proving the faithfulness of his love and of his grace and of his mercy, by proving over and over to us again by our experience with him in our daily lives that his word is true, that it is to be trusted, and that we can take comfort in understanding that trust. That it's not just people, I've heard all my life people talk about blind faith and blind trust. I want to assure you, child of God, that whenever the Lord has come and taken up his abode in your heart, whenever he has been pleased to display his might and his power and his majesty and his saving grace unto you, there's nothing blind about it. My faith is not blind. My faith is what allows me to see the greater glory of the living God. My faith is what allows me to see that God, in spite of all of man's failed attempts and all that we have ever set out to do for that matter, that God is in control, that God is on his throne, that God works his will in the armies of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth, and none can stay his hand or say unto him, what doest thou? Amen. You like the shalls in the Bible? You know, we all cling to that one, don't we? His name shall be called Jesus, for he shall save his people from their sins. What a wonderful, blessed promise and hope that is. But I want you to know something. This is the same shall in these scriptures. He that putteth his trust in me shall possess the land. Now, that's not talking about me going out here and possessing acreage per se, but rather that I will possess all that the Lord has laid before me in his promise, that I will be able to walk as Abraham. Remember the promise that God made unto Abraham when he spread the land before him? And he told him to walk as far as he could see. To look around him, that everything he could see was his. He said, now walk in it and possess the land. If all you're going to do is just stand and look out towards the horizon and say, wow, isn't that something? You're not going to get any benefit out of that other than just that momentary. What our benefit in the things of God comes from walking in the things of God. This is how that Abraham was to possess the land. This is how that we are to possess the land of the kingdom of God today. If we're going to possess it, we have to walk in it. He told him as far as you can see, it's yours. And I know I've given you this illustration before, but I hope it encourages your hearts today to understand that that's a perpetual blessing. Because if you set your eye on a mark on the farthest horizon that you can see, and I'll be the first to tell you I can't see as far as I once did. But if you set your eye on the farthest mark that you can see, and you walk to that mark, what do you find? There's still horizon out there, isn't there? There's a new mark out there for you to see. And if you walk to that mark, guess what? There's more for you to see. You see, this is the perpetual promise of God in walking in his kingdom, that we're not going to exhaust it. We're never going to fully explore the boundaries of it, because every time you walk to that boundary that you can see, God's going to show you more, and he's going to show you greater. And his promise is that if our trust is in him, that we shall possess that land, and we shall inherit his holy mountain. Now, how high is God's holy mountain? We got some high mountains. They're spectacular to see. They are overwhelming sometimes in their grandeur. And I find in another place in God's Word where he says, the mountain of the Lord's house is established in the tops of the mountains. So, as high as we can imagine, when we've imagined as high as we can imagine, the mountain of God's house is higher still. It is established in the tops of the mountains. And he has said that we shall, when our trust is in him, we shall inherit his holy mountain. And shall say, cast ye up, prepare the way, take up the stumbling block out of the way of my people. You know, one of the greatest stumbling blocks I think that exists among the Lord's people in this day and time is our failure to love one another as Jesus loved and loves us. If you want to cause a little child of God to stumble, you just fail to show him the love of Jesus. If you want to cause a little child of God to stumble, you just treat him in a way that he knows in his heart that Jesus would never have treated him. If you want to cause a little child of God to stumble, you criticize the experience that he shares with you of what the Lord has done in his life, because maybe he doesn't use the same language to describe it that you do. You see, it's time for us to get the stumbling blocks out of the way. It's time, and I want to, you see, the fact that the Lord has said that this will be our cry, that we shall take up the stumbling blocks, that we shall prepare His way and remove the stumbling block out of the way of His people. If I didn't have the strength and the ability to do that, God wouldn't tell me to do it. Now, again, I acknowledge that the strength and the ability is not in me. The strength and the ability comes from Him. What's in me is what causes God's people to stumble. You see, if I go trusting in my own strength, I'm going to be a stumbling block. I'm not going to just put one there. I'm going to be one. If I don't go with my trust fully established in Him, in spite of everything I can do, I'm going to be a stumbling block. Jesus had some very serious words about being a stumbling block to His people. You remember what He said? That it was better that a millstone be tied around their necks and is cast into the sea than to be a stumbling block to one of His little children. This is not something that Jesus takes lightly. And it's not something that we should take lightly. And if our trust is in the Lord, we won't take it lightly. We will be diligent to keep the stumbling blocks out of the way. For thus saith the high and lofty one that inhabiteth eternity. Now, sometimes we have this tendency, don't we, to think about eternity as being something that comes later. Eternity is something that we're going to get on the other side of death. Eternity is something we're going to possess on the other side of the graveyard. You see, eternity by its very nature cannot be that way. If by God's grace we will on the other side of the graveyard possess eternity, guess what? We're in possession of eternity now. Now, I don't see the fullness. I can't grasp, I can't embrace the fullness of eternity. But that doesn't mean that He hasn't given me an earnest to hold on to. That doesn't mean that He hasn't given me a foretaste of that wonder and of that bounty and of that glory. It is that, child of God, that makes us able to face the trials and the tribulations of this world. It is His presence. Do you understand that if God dwells with you, that eternity dwells with you? That if God has taken up His abode in your heart, that eternity lives in you? Thus saith the high and lofty one that inhabiteth eternity, whose name is holy. I want you to notice this is capitalized here. This is not a description. This is another time that He's telling us who He is. He says, God is love. Well, He's telling us here, His name is, capital H, His name is holy. This is one of the things that we ascribe to Him, not just as a descriptive term, not just as an adjective, but this is who He is. God is holy. Now this is what God is telling us. Understand. Thus saith the high and lofty one that inhabiteth eternity, whose name is holy. I dwell in the high and holy place. This is what God said about His dwelling. I dwell in the high and holy place. Again, what was it that Jesus told us? I and my Father will come and make up our abode with you. God said, I dwell in the high and holy place. What blessed creatures we are who trust in God to understand that because He has moved in, if you will, that He has brought with Him and brought into our lives a high and holy place, that we have a place of refuge that is exalted above the things of this world, that we have a place to turn to, a place to look to, a place to dwell in with Him that is separate and apart from all that would overwhelm us and from all that would overrun us. I dwell in the high and holy place with Him also that is of a contrite and humble spirit. That word contrite, sometimes we tend to read it as broken, but it goes beyond being broken. The meaning of the word here that was translated as contrite meant crushed. You ever crushed something? You know, if you break a glass, you might be able to get a little glue and put it back together. But if you crush it, you can forget it. You can't do anything with all those little slivers and ground up pieces. There have been a lot of people in the world over the last few days, and again, that's not new. There have always been people in every age and in every generation that find themselves from time to time in situations where they are crushed. But you know, you don't just break a grape whenever you go to make wine, do you? You crush it. It's pressed in a wine press. And it becomes something after that will not spoil. It becomes something that is of a purer nature than it was before it was crushed. God said, I dwell in the high and holy place with Him also that is of a contrite and humble spirit. God says, I dwell with those in that high and holy place who feel themselves to be crushed in the things that they face, in the things that they're called on to deal with. And he doesn't just dwell there because we're crushed. You see, God can do something with that crushing that we can't do. If I crush something, I've destroyed it, I've ruined it, I can't fix it. But God said, I dwell with Him of a crushed spirit to revive the spirit of the humble. You see, God can take that in us that is crushed and He can revive it into something glorious and something beautiful and something that gives forth a sweet savor to His nostrils, something that is worthy to give Him praise and honor and glory, something that is acceptable unto Him. To revive the spirit of the humble and to revive the heart of the contrite ones. To revive the heart that is crushed beneath a weight of doubt, a weight of fear, a weight of sin. God revives that which is crushed. God speaks life into that which by all other means would be destroyed, would be unsalvageable. You see, there is nothing that God cannot fix. There is nothing that God cannot cure. There is no state that we will ever find ourselves in that God is not able to deliver us in. And notice I said deliver us in. I have found over the years, not just by record, but by own experience, no matter sometimes how much I might want to be delivered out of things, I don't usually get delivered out. I get delivered in. God didn't deliver Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego out of the fiery furnace. He delivered them in the fiery furnace. He didn't deliver Daniel out of that den of lions. He delivered Daniel in that den of lions. He didn't prevent Daniel from being thrown into that den. He didn't prevent Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego from being thrown into that fire. And he is not going to prevent you from being thrown into the trials of your faith. But know this, that the trial of your faith is precious to him. And that when we are tried sufficiently, we shall come forth as gold. To revive the heart of those that are crushed. For I will not contend forever. That word contend means strive. And we often hear that used as a threat of God's judgment. Well, God's not going to strive with man always. Well, no, he's not. And we ought to be thankful for that. Read his word here, child of God. For I will not contend forever, neither will I be always wroth. For the spirit should fail before me, and the souls which I made. God said, I'm not going to strive with you forever. I am going to make a way. I am going to send you a deliverer. I'm not going to strive with you forever. I'm not going to be wroth with you forever. Because if I was, it would destroy you. You see, it's of the Lord's mercy that we are not consumed. When he says, I will not contend forever, and follows it with that, neither will I be always wroth, we ought to take comfort in that. He didn't make that statement to cause us to go somewhere and draw up in a corner and tremble in fear. He said it to relieve us of our fear. I'm not going to contend with you forever. I'm not going to always be angry with you. I have a remedy. I have provided a remedy. I will be the remedy. Because otherwise, the souls which I have made would fail before me. How gracious, wondrous, merciful, loving is that God. For if the truth be known, and I got what I deserved, I deserved to be crushed. I deserve to be left beyond repair. That is what it means to have a sin nature. God would be perfectly justified if he let my spirit fail before him. You see, we're his. You know, for good or ill, you can pretty much do what you want to with what's yours. Yours for right. I might not approve of what you do with it, but it's not yours. good tools because he didn't know how to take care of them. Just irritated me to death because he bought stuff that I'd looked to have and couldn't afford. And he just let it sit out in the rain and rust and then he'd go buy him another. Just irritated me. But you know what I could do about it? Absolutely nothing. It wasn't mine. He bought them and paid for them. Didn't matter how much it displeased me with what he did with them, they were his. Do you understand this morning, child of God, that God has made you? That you are his by right of ownership. And by right of that ownership, he has poured out his love upon you. He has poured out his mercy and grace upon you. He has proven to you that you can trust him, that you can have confidence in him, that you can have faith in him, and that when you are crushed, he is not going to leave you that way, that he is able to revive you even when you are crushed, and that he will not be forever angry with his people. Because we couldn't survive that. How thankful we ought to be that we serve one who is not only able to revive that which is crushed. Again, you think about our nature. If I crush something, no matter what it meant to me, if I crush it, if I damage it beyond all that's recognizable, and I've done that to a few things in my life, I might mourn it. I might wish it hadn't happened. But when all is said and done, that's all I can do is feel bad about it and hope I can replace it somewhere down the line. How wondrous it is to serve a God who can take even that which is crushed, that which we would be damaged beyond all hope, and breathe life into it again, revive it, pick it up, put it together, make something better of it than it was before. May God have mercy upon us. Upon all those that are crushed this day, this world over, from this virus, from the violence, from the wrongful deaths, from the heartache and the sorrow of just daily living. And yes, please, by all means, remember the McCoy family. And I just ask you this morning to remember Brother Pat, especially Tuesday. The funeral is going to be Tuesday, and it's going to be Brother Pat's lot. To stand over the body of his grandson and try to bring comfort to his family while his own heart's breaking. That's a tough place to be. But see again, God can take that which is crushed and revive the heart of the Spirit so that it might give him glory. That is their desire and their prayer. I thank God for you.